everyone, good evening. My name is Darwin Chimba. I'm a fifth year, going to sixth year medical student at the Copperbelt University School of Medicine in Zambia. I'm also the Director of Operations as well as a research fellow for the Association of Future African Neurosurgeons. So today we have a fantastic program or other presentation that we have today, which is being conducted by our own creative designer, Chidiebere. So firstly, I'm going to ask everyone to introduce themselves. That is the people on the panel, they're going to introduce themselves, and then we're going to go into the presentation. So I'm going to ask Alice, please introduce yourself and your name, where you are from, and your academic or professional level.
Thank you, Darwin. My name is Alice Umutoni from Rwanda, medical student level 4. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
doing
Alice.
medicine in College of Medicine in Rwanda, University of Rwanda.
Right, that's really great. Then we have Dr. Franklin.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Dr. Franklin Tetinu, a medical doctor from Cameroon. I graduated from Université Le Montagne, that is in Cameroon. So I'm a research fellow in the Association of Future African Neurosurgeons. And of course, aspire to be a neurosurgeon. So I'm very glad to meet you guys today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Franklin. We have Dr. Brad Lott.
Hey everyone, I'm Brad Roti Igiraneza. I'm a general practitioner from Burundi. I have graduated last year in February at the Hope Africa University here in Burundi. I think that is all.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brad Lott. Then we have Lorraine. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lorraine Sabotelo, and Vice President of the Association of Future African Neurosurgeons, and also a medical student, third-year medical student. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Lorraine. Then we have Dr. Noru.
Hi, I'm Dr. Noru, Chief Resident in Neurosurgery. I'm glad to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Noru. Then we have Dr. Daniel.
Hello, everyone. My name is
Dr. Daniel. We can hear you.
I'm from the Democratic Republic of Congo. I'm a young medical doctor and aspiring neurosurgeon and a member of AFAN. It is a pleasure to be a part of this meeting today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Daniel. Then we have Olalua Ezekiel.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I am Olalua Ezekiel Dada. I'm a second-year medical student from the University of Ibadan, Nigeria. I'm also a research fellow at the Association of Future African Neurosurgeons. Glad to be here. Looking forward to the talk.
Thank you so much, Ezekiel. Then we have Dr. Stephanie.
Hello, everyone. I'm Stefan Gembo from Cameroon. I'm a general practitioner and head of research department of AFAN. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stefan. Then we have Dr. Juanita.
Hello, I'm Dr. Juanita, medical officer in Spain.
Thank you so much, Dr. Juanita. Then we have Dr. Omar.
Yes, so hello, I'm Dr. Omar from Benin.
So I think at this time I'm going to call on the presenter to introduce himself and go straight into the presentation. Chidiebere, please, you can come on board.
Hi, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to you all, depending on where you are in the world. So I'm Chidiebere Ibe, and I'm a Nigerian Medical Illustrator, and also the creative director of the Association of Future African Neurosurgeons. And it's good to be here today. It's really good to be here today. So today I'll quickly share my screen and we can start a discussion. I don't know if my screen up. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah, we see that.
We can see the screen.
We can see.
All right, thank you very much. So as I earlier said, I'm Chidiebere Ibe, and so today I'll be talking about how to make a visual abstract. And so today's conversation would actually be very interactive, okay, because nobody has the monopoly of knowledge. So it will be very interactive. I would share my perspective, and you all will share a perspective on how to make a visual abstract. So it's often said that that a picture is more than 1,000 words. And today we'll be seeing to that the essence of why research papers should carry visual abstract, and also how to make them obeying simple design principles. So I'll move forward to the next slide. So in our content today, we'll be discussing first what visual abstract is, how it started, simple rules to obey when creating a visual abstract, and simple layout for a visual abstract. Then we'll go into sampling. This sampling simply means that we would look at different visual abstracts. We will do comparisons, which of the paperwork actually did obey the principle of making a design. Then thirdly, we'll go into elements of design. So this will be, I'll be explaining elements of design. What are the key principles that every person needs to obey when creating a visual abstract or any design at all, be it an animation or a poster or a visual abstract. Then I would be explaining how to make a visual abstract here. So I'll move to the next slide now. So first of all, what actually is a visual abstract? I would say this is actually it's a single, concise, pictorial and visual summary of a main finding of an article or of the article. So if you were to underline a particular word, it would be the main finding, and also concise. So it's also important to note that abstracts are actually not substitute to reading the article itself, because the visual abstract does not contain details of the particular paperwork. So in as much as a visual abstract is important for the audience, it doesn't on its own contain everything in detail. So it's we also know that for every idea that came on board was a thought creation of someone. So visual abstract was actually first created in June 2016 by the creative editor of Annals of Surgery, which is Dr. Andrew Ibrahim. So the sole purpose of creating this visual abstract was actually to disseminate the best of science to the broad audience. That was the essence why Dr. Ibrahim introduced visual abstract, and also to communicate to the non-science audience, or to those who are not in the science field, that on seeing a paper, on seeing a visual abstract, it's easy to understand what a particular paper is talking about. Then Dr. Andrew, in his research, also realized that the visual abstract itself had greater view. Okay, it had about 5 times view of how an article should have shown. Then I also stated that its purpose is to capture the viewer's attention, as highlighted here, the viewer's attention. This is actually to show, as I earlier underlined here, the viewer's attention, because for you to capture a person's attention, you have to be keen you have to be keen enough to attract the person to be able to read your paper. Okay, so as shown here, it shows that the article has been graphical abstract are benefit for both in terms of the views of the articles, as well as increased activity on social media. So this was also found that visual abstract was more communicating, that its purpose is to capture the viewer's attention, as highlighted in red, the viewer's attention, because for a person to read your paperwork, the visual abstract must itself be captivating. Okay, so as I also said earlier on, that it was also shown that it created much engagement on social media through the research work of Dr. Andrew, which is actually the creative editor at the Annals of Surgery. So also, I would also be saying that it's also important to know that people actually interact with images more than words. So I'm actually explaining the essence of visual abstract. So in as much as words are important, in as much as paper can be, it's important also to embrace the essence of visual abstract. But sadly to say that most journals do not embrace visual abstract. I think mostly it's always in neurosurgery journals that visual abstract are mostly done, but most journals do not really do that. But from this research, I've really shown that there's an essence to the use of visual abstract. So I'll move to the next slide now. So it's also important to know what are the guiding rules. Now, as I earlier stated here, the guiding rules, because these rules can actually be bent but still obeyed. So the first rule here is to focus on the user's experience. So the user experience, what I simply means that when making a visual abstract, you must consider, put in mind, who are your audience? Okay, what do you want your audience to see? What do you want the reader to learn from your paperwork? Okay, so that's when you focus on user's experience. So when you focus on that, and you want to give the key message in your research work, this will guide you to making a concise and a clear visual abstract, which takes us to the next one, clarity of purpose. This is focused on what's the most important thing in your paperwork. For example, your paperwork can be bulky, okay, can be much, but it's important to digest the paperwork and to understand, okay, what are the key points that I want my audience to see. Then this will also lead us to the next point, which is the thoughtful restraint. This actually means that you focus on the key messages. So as I earlier said, your paper can be a bit lengthy. So this is where a careful study of your paperwork, you will now dissect and, okay, so at this particular point, these are the key messages I want my audience or I want my reader to see from my research work. Then that will be a guiding tool, because one of the key principles of visual abstract that it's actually very simple and clear to the point. Then fourth point is relevant creativity. Now, I actually added the relevant creativity because a lot of persons at the point of being creative have actually missed the guiding rules to making a visual abstract. So as most time I tell people that creativity is not the absence of knowledge, okay? It's just a tweak or a bend to knowledge. So in as much as you are showing your creative prowesses, it's important to keep the rule very, very simple, clarity of purpose. And of course, everybody has some sort of creativity to a certain level. And that's why it's important to keep trying. So that's one of the guiding rules, because I remember when I did my first visual abstract, it wasn't that amazing. I mean, I knew it wasn't that good. Okay, as a designer, I knew it wasn't that good, but that was my very first time of doing that. But I kept on trying and trying, and it got better. So that's one of the guiding rules. And secondly, so I'm moving to key components of visual abstract. So this is where I actually focus on very, very much, so that, because this is actually the key to creating a better visual abstract. So the first point is summarize key questions being addressed. Now that simply means summarize your title. Okay, for those who have long titles in visual abstract, it's not wise to put all the title in a visual abstract. So if you wrote your paperwork and you want to create your own visual abstract, you would know how to paraphrase the words, okay, to still have the same meaning, but in a very concise way. So there is no need to keep a very long title to your of your research in the visual abstract. Then secondly, you summarize the outcome. Okay, so for those who have a lot of did a lot of research and had multiple of outcome, okay, so it's important to focus on what outcome are the most important. Okay, so you want your audience to readers rather to to read or to understand particular case, probably a brain trauma in a particular community, okay? So your focus should be, what is the region? Your focus should be, what are the numbers? What are the comparisons? So it's important to prioritize your outcome on the most important, okay? At least 3 outcomes, okay, are advisable to be used when summarizing your outcome. Then for author and citation, it's for people who have a lot of authors who actually contribute to the paperwork, it is not necessary to include all the authors, okay? So the corresponding author's name could be there, cited below, okay, with cited below with the year and the journal logo, preferably. Okay, so there's actually no need to write all the authors, but if there are about 5 authors, it's okay. So just below the title up, the authors could be written clearly out if there are about 5, but if there are more than that, there's a need to cite it properly. Then I also talking about state the outcome comparison. Now, for example, a paperwork was focused on brain trauma, okay? So, and you are making a comparison. It's important to state the outcome comparison, because people want to see what was the results of your research. For example, if a research was focused on, let's say, neurotrauma, or let's say, brain trauma in, let's say, city like Kampala, for example, and in that research, you wanted to state an outcome, it would be better to say, maybe this research was done in 2016, for example. It's better to say increased brain trauma. Maybe from your research, you realize that there had been an increase in brain trauma from 2014 to 2016. Okay, so you can paraphrase that. So instead of saying brain trauma increased in 2016, okay, so at that point, the year is not really important in that particular abstract at that point. But what's more important is that there's an increased brain trauma. So as short as that, it has actually given a clear definition of what your results were, that from your research, you found that there was an increased brain trauma. Now you've done that now. So now what is the basis of comparison now? So that way it comes to a visual display of the outcome. So if you're saying that there's been an increased brain trauma, what's the comparison from what year to what year? Okay, so if I was to do a design or a visual abstract regarding a particular area, so if I was to state the outcome for neurotrauma in particular year, what I would simply do is to get a picture over the internet, okay, maybe an illustration of the human brain, maybe that has a brain hemorrhage, okay. Then by the side of the brain, I would draw an arrow from the bottom to the top, showing saturation. So at the point of this lesson, I will explain what saturation is, which is one of the elements of designs. So showing saturation, that from at the peak, I would say, okay, this is the benchmark, then below, this is the outcome. So once you show the arrow showing, that has actually, like from visual display, that's shown the outcome that at this particular year, there's been an increase in brain trauma. So that's easy to understand. Then it's also important to have a further outcome representation. For example, if your research shows that there was an increase, and it's also important to show what sex had greater number of brain trauma. Like, so were they the male or the female? If they were the male, maybe in your research you had found that the male had greater number of brain trauma, and maybe that could be because of the kind of work they had been doing or something. Then at that point, it's not important to state the cause of the trauma in your visual abstract, but it's important to state the sex. Then most error people make in visual abstract is that at the point of trying to show the visual display of the outcome based on sex segmentation, you draw icons. Okay, maybe you use image icons because there are certain symbols that represent the male and the female. So for better clarity, it's not advisable to use icons that represent male and female, but rather use a typical image. So if your research was based on an African setting, it's important to use an illustration, a simple 2D illustration of a male and a female, okay, showing the arrow and the percentage, and the percentage of the data. So that would speak better, or that would create a better understanding to those who are actually reading your paper. So other than using just an icon, because not everybody might understand what that icon might mean. So for example, a male icon, no, but not much people might know that the symbol they represent a male, okay, because you're not going to use a key in a visual abstract. It's important to keep it strictly simple, that you're using an illustration or a simple illustration of an African male and African female to represent that. Then also it's important to state the data of the outcome. So these data of outcome are based on percentage. So you could say there was a 30% notice that male had greater percentage of brain trauma. So that's in comparison to something. Okay, so you could say 30 out of this, 50 out of this. So that's a better comparison. Someone reading a visual abstract would understand that this is a premise of which I'm making your comparisons. Then also there's certain fonts, okay, that are advisable to be used in creating a visual abstract. Like for my PowerPoint now, the font used is a Century Gothic font, okay, but it advised that you can use an Arial font or a Century Gothic font. So it's not advisable to use a font that are scribbly, okay, to create a better understanding and better visuality for your readers. Then certain files for most time journals would give you a certain file to submit, okay? That's based on clarity. Now, for example, now here I stated that you need to use the file, which is the TIFF, which simply means the tag image file format, okay? Or you use the portable network graphic, which is the PNG. So the reason why this format are preferable because they have ability to give you high resolution images. Because most times, for example, now if you post your pictures on social media like Facebook, for example, over the years, it is known that, and it will notice that the quality of the image begin to drop. Okay, that's because those pictures were in JPEG format. So, but if you're creating a visual abstract and you're exporting it in a TIFF format, it is guaranteed that this format would definitely stay longer, and of course those journals would accept format like this. Then this image size is actually not it's just a stipulation, but what this simply means is that your width has to be around this number, then your height has to be around this number. So that's more like having a landscape visual abstract. So it's not advisable to create a portrait visual abstract, but a landscape visual abstract for better interaction. So I'm moving to the next slide, which has to do with the do's and don'ts of visual abstract. So the do's of visual abstract says, do remove details without changing the conclusions. So at the point, this actually is relative to relevant creativity. So at the point of trying to create a concise, paper, a visual abstract, it's important not to elude the important details, okay? So before you start creating a visual abstract, it's important that you have studied your abstract, okay? You have known the method that was used in a particular research, and you actually the result of that. So that's where you now know, okay, I'm actually gonna remove some details without changing the conclusion. Then it's also say, draw the narrowest and most limited conclusion from the data. That's similar to the first point, but that simply entails that your conclusion is also important also in creating a visual abstract. It's important to draw the most important data you want your audience to also see. Then also say, use easy to read, appropriate size fonts. For example, I earlier said before, Arial fonts and Century Gothic are actually very good fonts to use for visual abstract. Then save image in high resolution, which I also explained before. Image quality can drop over a period of time. It's important to export them in high resolution. Then also important to ask feedback from others. As I earlier said before I started that nobody has the monopoly of knowledge, okay? So we're all learning at some point in our life. So if you feel that your visual abstract is not what you desire it to be, of course, share with somebody else. So it's not because it's not a point where you share your visual abstract to a particular journal and it get rejected. So this is the point where you share it with others and get feedback on where you can augment or where it can be corrected for a better presentation. So there are actually some don'ts that to be abided with. For example, use icons or graphics without permission of the users with all user right. So it's, like I earlier said, if you're using an image of an illustration of the human brain, it's important to note that is that image a copyrighted image? If it's a free source image, fine, that can be used without the consent, because at that point there's no copyright. But if the image you desire to use is copyrighted, it's important to write to the creator or that particular image seeking the consent to use that image. Then also, do not attempt to include all studies in the findings. So at the point of today's discussions, I was sharing a lot of visual abstract that we created that try to include a lot of findings, and the abstract looks so bulky. Then also say add an interpretation of the study's finding. So this is where you have to understand what you're actually creating. So from your research work, what do you understand what do you understand from your research? How can you interpret it? Not missing out the prose, not missing out the important words that were in the research itself. So while trying to tweak the words to be concise, it's important not to miss out the important thing. Then also use the journal logo if the visual abstract is not sponsored by the journal. So it's a rule that all visual abstract must have the journal logo. Then it also I had to put here some tools that could be used. So for those who would desire to create advanced visual abstract, okay, tools like the Adobe Illustrator can be used, CorelDRAW, okay, Canva, and Photoshop. Like for me, I use Adobe Illustrator, CorelDRAW, and Photoshop to create my visual abstract. Then for those who do not have a fair knowledge about these, it's advised to use the PowerPoint. But the issue of PowerPoint is that it limits your creativity because you're not able to do a certain thing that you would have done if using tools like CorelDRAW or Adobe Illustrator. But for those who have no knowledge about this, it's important to stick to what works best for you, which is PowerPoint, which is often used by most researchers. All right, so to the next slide. So at this point, I would love us to just take a look at this particular visual abstract. So for my far left, this was created by Journal of Neurosurgery. It was submitted by Journal of Neurosurgery. So this actually looks very simple, but there are so many things wrong with this visual abstract. Okay, so I don't know. Can someone just tell us what's wrong with this? Actually, wrong with this visual abstract?
To me, I think I don't really appreciate the organization, like the way it's been organized.
Okay, awesome. Anybody else?
Hello.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Then for me, I think it's not so eye-catching. It has less of visuals. The only visuals probably are the graphs that are there, but we don't have so much of the visuals, so it's not so eye-catching. So it's like it impends the whole idea of a visual abstract.
Awesome.
Yeah, in my opinion, also I think that it's like a poster, not like an abstract visual.
Great. So anybody else?
Yes, for me, I think that those graphs will have been taken important informations inside the graph and remove the graph inside the visual abstract because it's too compacted and it's not really attractive. Yes.
Awesome. Yes, that's great. So anybody else want to share? Maybe the visual abstract below, the one that says is using social media good or bad for your health? Can someone talk about that?
Yeah, I love this. Like the words aren't much. Like the words aren't much, and the pictures actually tell us more about the stuff.
Okay, great. Anybody else?
I think it's a good one because it sort of summarizes the key questions that are probably being addressed in the main paper, and it's short, it's clear. The summary of the outcomes is quite clear. Yeah.
All right, great. Someone else has to say something else? Okay, so in the absence of none, I would say that these three visual abstracts here are actually wrong. They're actually not following the rules of visual abstract. First of all, on the far left, the use of the graph wasn't necessary in this. This should, as earlier said, this should have been summarized into key point, and it's so wordy, so much words. Like it says, method literature search of DBS. So it's just too much words, and the graph used are not necessary. So and secondly, the title is actually too long. So bilateral deep brain stimulation, or it's actually very long. So this should have been summarized in a very short form. So every other thing is okay because the journal logo is there, and the citation is okay. Then on the far right, everything is wrong with this visual abstract. Like everything is wrong. Now, starting first of all, from the visual, we can't see the title anywhere, and the journal logo is supposed to be placed below, not above. At the title supposed to be placed above. And there's so much words in this visual abstract, so much words. So it's not a good way of creating a visual abstract. Then the corresponding author Twitter's handle should have been kept below, on the far right, below. Then for the visual abstract, which is actually below here, which says, is social media good or bad for your health? At this visual abstract rather is actually not good. The reason why I say so because you can't be asking a question and answering the question in visual abstract. And as it says here, new scale, we develop the online social experience. That's more like giving a statement. So and nobody had that time to read much of this statement. It's already in your work. So it's important that the researcher would have summarized this particular statement and not giving them in details, and no point of asking questions on the visual abstract. And the position of the citation is actually not proper. Okay, and okay, they did well to include the journal logo. So these three visual abstracts are actually not proper. So that's why I actually placed them here. So the next slide will show some visual abstract and some correction that could be done. So this visual abstract, for this particular one, on which shows how does sleep disturbance affect hemodialysis patients. For this is okay. This is very simple, but there was no need to add a conclusion below. If you check below, you see conclusion. So there was no need to add that. Then secondly, what's wrong about the design is because it's a color combination. So the next slide I will show us the element of design is on kind of color we should use for a visual abstract. So this on the far left, there was no need to add a conclusion, and there was no need to add a reference in this visual abstract. Then for this blue, I think this is just good. This is okay. It's simple and it's comic. So from research, it shows that people interacted more with visual abstract that were comic. So if we say that your paper should reach a wider audience, it's important that you try bringing comic creations into your visual abstract. Then for this, the colors for the blue visual abstract here, the colors were okay, but I can't clearly tell what the result were, or what the title is, but the color combination was just okay. Then for every other one here, for the one below here, for sake of time, the one below here, the color combinations are not that okay, and there was no need to add a conclusion for the incidence of ESKD. Don't need to add a conclusion for this. So from everything I've said from this particular abstract, from this particular slide, there is no need to add a conclusion to your visual abstract. And it's also important to understand color combinations when creating a visual abstract. So that takes us to the next slide. Now, I'm going to talk about elements of designs today. This will be guiding us to creating better visual abstract. Now, first of all, is the point. Every design must have a point. Now, so for example, now if you're creating a visual abstract and you wanted to emphasize on the number, for example, the number of patients in a particular hospital, there are different tools. For example, you could use a magnifying glass to emphasize on a number. So that's where an element of point comes in. Then secondly is the element of line. So we are trying to we are emphasizing connection between results, connection between outcome. It's important to understand what kind of lines are you using in your design. So mostly it's important to use the vertical lines and the horizontal lines, as these are very simple lines. Then the shape, it's simple. It's important to understand what kind of shape they're using for your design, for your visual abstract. Mostly are rectangles and circles, okay? So using shapes like hexagon or polygons are actually not very good to be used on a visual abstract. Then for the form simply means what shape does the design take, okay? So if someone sees the design, what shape does it take? Does it look a bit presenting or not? Then texture, this has to do with making your design, if you're adding a drop shadow or making your design more realistic. Then color, if you look at your far right here, I call this a color wheel. It's actually called a color wheel. Now if you look at this triangle inside the color wheel, at this point where these triangles touch themselves. Now, one of the rules of designs is that any design that you're making or any visual abstract you're making, the maximum color that should be used is 3 colors. Okay, so that's one of the rules of design, that the maximum color should be used is 3. If you've tried and you couldn't keep to at least 4 should be okay, but the maximum should be 3. Now this is a color wheel. This let me explain how this works. Now if you rotate this angle here clockwise, if you rotate it clockwise, at the point where each angle tip touches are the 3 colors that could go for any design. So it's not proper to use, if you then do a design and you use orange, then you use yellow, then you use green. Those are 3 wrong colors. And if you rotate your angles, it won't give you a proper positioning. So this is a guide to make choosing colors for your design. So at the point you rotate it either clockwise or anti-clockwise, the 3 colors that the triangle are on are the 3 best colors that you could use to do your visual abstract. Then value simply means shades of color. Okay, as Ella seen here, this now what value simply does that it makes a design very simple. So instead of using multiples of color, it's important you just use 1 color but different shades of color. Then one of the most important elements of design is space. From the visual abstract that I showed earlier on, most of them were actually very crowded. There were no space in the design. So this is actually called breathing space. So you allow your design to breathe. You allow your visual abstract to have a breathing space. So these are elements of design. So when you pay key considerations to this element, your designs will be better. Then I would love us to just take a dive into this. This is a research that was done by our very dear own Ezekiel. So I just did a snapshot of this. So if I was to do visual abstract of this, from the results, I think I could focus. Now it says here that we identified 76 African training programs. So one of the key points to know that it's the 76 African training programs. That's the key point to note. Then that says that we recruit more than 168 trainees each year. Okay, at this point now, the 168 trainees is an outcome, okay, that should be considered. But the point of each year would not be necessary to be placed on the visual abstract. Then this is the percentage that should be considered when making a comparison. Now this paper, so now it's the most intriguing value, because for this now the outcome were actually 3. So it's okay to use these 3 outcomes for visual abstract, but if the outcome if you did for like 10 countries, there will be no need to include those 10 countries in the visual abstract, but rather 3 is just the maximum that could be included. Then from there, you could say from West African College of Surgeons had 17 accredited programs in 3 countries. So this is a key point that could be included in the visual abstract. Then the duration of the training varies between 4 and 8 years. This is also a key point that should be included in the visual abstract. So these are very, so it's just from the results alone, you're able to deduce a better visual abstract. So at this point, I would say a very big thank you. As I've come to the end of my presentation, I would also love to take other contributions from every other person. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your brilliant presentation, Chidi. I learned a lot. I just want to thank you very much.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you. So over to you, Darwin. Maybe contributions from persons. Okay.
All right, thank you so much. This was a very wonderful, very precise and clear presentation. I also learned a lot from it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, that was a wonderful presentation. Ibe, like always, you. Thank you very much. I really learned much about that. So sometimes you think that we know about those kind of things, but by listening presentations, we almost learn. That's good. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. So do we have questions? I would take questions. So.
Yes, please. I have one question about those software that you use to create visual abstract. I didn't get well the name of those software.
Okay, so the software okay, Photoshop, Adobe Photoshop, or PowerPoint. So for me, I use Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator and CorelDRAW. So any other question or contributions?
Yes, I have a question.
All right, great.
Or you can show us how to make those abstract in a software like Canva or like in Photoshop. I think this will be very great and very useful for many of us. But the presentation was very magnifique, very awesome.
What did you say first? Sorry.
What I said is we can have a practical session where you can show us how to create a visual abstract with some software like Canva.
Yes, certainly.
This will be very helpful for many of us.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Yeah.
Time factor that might not allow us to do that today, but certainly we could maybe, I don't know if there are subsequent lectures that will be taken by another speaker, so that could be done certainly.
Yeah, so most probably the following presentations, that would be a great idea.
All right.
So, are there any further questions?
Yes, thank you so much for the presentation. I just didn't get your explanation on what was supposed to make the conclusion for the abstract. I think I missed the explanation on that.
Okay, how to make a conclusion?
Yes.
Okay, so as I said earlier on, it's first of all, it's not important to include a conclusion on a visual abstract, but it's important to summarize what the conclusion also says, okay, and which integrates what is in your abstract. Okay, so when I said conclusion, I simply meant summarize the entire paperwork into very few sentences, including more of pictures, because that's why it's called a visual abstract, okay? So more of the pictures than the words. So that's where the conclusion comes in. Summarize it, interpret it in the way your audience would also understand it better. So that's where conclusion, but it's not important, it's not necessary, it's not important rather to include a conclusion on a visual abstract. All right.
Yeah, that's very true. Like you're saying, it's about conveying the key findings of the paper.
Yes, yes.
All right. I think otherwise, if there are no further questions, I think I'd like to thank everybody who attended. Thank you to the presenter who made a wonderful presentation. And I look forward to seeing everyone again in the following presentations. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for coming. Thank you.